Thanks, guys, for coming. Everybody here was kind of handpicked because every one of these guys, when I've talked to them about, you know, this topic of potency for profit, and really kind of diving into what I was discovering when I was kind of going up into Canada last year, and really looking at bringing my genetics onto the global market, and what that looks like, and what the challenges are of doing that is. And I think I learned a lot. And what I wanted to do is, rather than sugarcoat it and tell you everything is going to be great and it's easy, I wanted to bring these gentlemen up to discuss kind of the real hard facts of, you know, what it looks like if you're going to bring a genetic into the system, what boxes need to get checked off, and in order for it, you know, how incredibly difficult that is, and then a lot of the other variables around it. So I wanted to start with you, Matt. Matt's over at Lyonleaf up in Canada. Matt, could you just start by introducing yourself and just tell us about Lyonleaf and kind of how long you've been operating, and then I'd like to ask you a couple questions.
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everyone. So Lyonleaf's a premium producer based out of Montreal. We've been operational since 2020, and you know, starting then, it was like THC needs to be minimum 20% to really be commercially viable, and since then, every year it kind of just kept getting higher and higher in terms of that minimum spec that really is needed. That's why I'm excited to be here talking about this important topic for sure.
And actually, let me go down and just introduce Dave. Dave, can you introduce yourself and just let them know like about your facility and what you do up there in Canada?
Yeah, my name's Dave. I'm the commissioner for Big League Genetics and Big League Cultivation. We've had a nursery in Canada for the last 4 years. We pheno hunt and have been providing genetics to the Canadian market. And then this year we got our cultivation license. We've got a 20,000 square foot GACP cultivation facility, and we grow all of our genetics. We do pheno hunts there, and we sell all of our product to the international market.
And we got David from Sensi Seeds. David, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So my name is David Duclos. I've been working for Sensi Seeds for 15 years, and Sensi, as some of you will know, has been operating out of the Netherlands since 1985. It's one of the first official seed banks that were set up. We have one of the largest genetic collections in the world, and I've been representing them for the last 5 to 10 years, and I'm mostly kind of an all-round problem solver in the company. But I've been exposed to all aspects of the industry, and it's fascinating to see what's happening here. So we're adjusting to that a bit. So I look forward to telling you more about how Europe's been going and what the future's going to bring.
And we got Rez Khan from DNA Genetics.
Hi, my name is Rez. I'm from DNA Genetics. I'm the president of DNA Genetics. We have a very unique set of experiences in cannabis, in that as a genetics company, we've had the opportunity and the privilege to work with so many people, boots on ground, in so many different countries, and in essence run a running comparative analysis of the different markets and how to do business in each of these markets. So we hope that that experience will be valuable for this discussion and kind of charting out where we go from here.
And thanks, guys. And part of this discussion too is, for me, when I was going and spending time, a lot of money, traveling around the world, going and kind of figuring out the global market, finding that, you know, by realizing that what Canada has to bring to the global market, and the fact that they've been doing it a lot longer, and they've been licensed for a lot longer, and they're really ahead of the global market, and they're also, you know, my neighbors. But when a lot of this information, you don't want to share with people. You know, I think even if you look at it like genetics, like you have something special, you know, your knowledge is your IP. And if you go and you just share with everybody, I think there's a big part of just the competitiveness of our industry is that we want to share, and we say that we're kind of a culture of sharing, but we're really not. And I feel like when it comes to the knowledge, it's time for it to be shared. I think it's not about keeping the genetics you have, you know, secret. It's not about keeping the knowledge that you have secret. It's about creating an environment and a stage like we were able to do here with the Vault and with MJBiz to have the discussions to be able to push this plant forward. And what's important in one piece is to have the knowledge that if you have genetics, and I speak to so many breeders that have good genetics and they work on a small scale and they have great things, but they don't know how to bridge that gap. They want to, the idea of getting their genetics, sold globally is a dream of theirs, but they really don't know how to do it. Maybe they know a grower in Canada. Maybe they have somebody that wants to buy flower in Germany. Maybe they have certain aspects of the supply chain, but they don't have it all figured out. So for me, from here, if you've got the seeds and you've got the genetics, step one is kind of finding a partnership with like somebody like Matt. There's a lot of growers, there's a lot of licensed growers, but where they've got the ability, especially if they're GMP, if they're EU GMP, which I definitely want to talk a little bit more about that and educate you guys. But Matt, what I want to ask you is like, can you, there's a lot of different aspects to some of these boxes that need to get checked off, and I want to, let Dave and, some of the other people that are cultivating in Canada talk about it, but can you kind of talk about like your intake process and I think one aspect is can you talk about like from popping seeds to tissue culture and just off bat the importance of keeping your environment clean, and so even if there's not genetics in the system and if they're not from tissue culture, kind of even just step one for those guys out there that do have hopes and dreams of being able to get into this global market, could you just educate them a little bit about what that process looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So huge part of what we do at Lyonleaf is pheno hunting. We actually have a dedicated facility and license just for pheno hunting, where we'll hunt through around 500 kind of different phenos throughout any given year. So it's really important for us to find collaborations with guys like Mario that have these type of genetics to bring into the system. So both from seed popping, like Mario said, and then also with tissue culture we have set up, which is beneficial so that no matter where the genetics are kind of coming from, we can clean them, get them into the facility. But also even once we do find winners, knowing that we can kind of hold them back in tissue culture, especially given if someone's a winner, which we'll get more into later, but it just doesn't hit the THC box. At least with tissue culture, we know we can keep that in. And then so our process is really to make sure that we're getting through as many numbers as possible, is to start off with as little as 2 plants for a pheno, really just to kind of get a sense, does it have the potential, is it checking the boxes, to further study and bring up to a larger sample size. And then, unfortunately, so many don't hit the THC mark that get us the most excited. And that's why, trying to talk about how we can move in a different direction and really look for full spectrum genetics that really excite our team that we want to smoke, be the ones that are actually commercially viable.
So maybe, Dave, I gotta ask you this question. Kind of ties into what I was just talking to Matt about. But once you find something that's commercially viable, like what are the boxes that need to be checked off? Now, before we go into the global market, can we talk about Canada in general? Like, so what are the minimum requirements if you're a grower in Canada and you want your product to sell and not sit on the shelf? What are the minimum requirements that you're seeing that in terms of THC percentages and, any other aspect of the variety?
THC is definitely one. As Matt said, the number used to be 22%, then 24%, then 26%, and the number continues to climb. We cultivate as well, and so there's more boxes that need to be checked. A 30%er is great, but if she's all foxtaily and doesn't have a structure that you can really work with, or it's going to spend a lot of time in the trim room, sometimes that's the box that's just a bridge too far to cross. So, commercial viability, big yield, grams per light is definitely something we're looking for. And then, potency, some color, and then different customers have different needs for a terp profile or a flavor that they're trying to find themselves in. They want something citrus or they want something gas, and, so you have to try and find, specific to the SKU that they're searching for.
Rez, I know you got something to say about this.
Yeah, I do.
Why don't you weigh in and just kind of give you a different perspective?
So one of the things that I've found is every time we enter market, we have the responsibility to deal with whatever the regulatory framework is, but then we also have to deal with what the development, the education level of the market, right? And oftentimes we've found in the past, right, that prior to testing and legal weed, you had a scenario where if somebody could bring a genetic to a certain market, get it to a grower who can finish it right, and take it to the people, you would have an incredible amount of success. Whether it was sour diesel in New York, whether it was how 24K blew up in Brazil, whether it's how kosher blew up in Amsterdam, and the list goes on, right? You have these pockets, OG in LA in the 90s. And nobody ever questioned where it tested and where it hit. On cannabinoid levels, on THC level, it was more about the experience, how it smoked, how it felt, how it tasted, right? Yeah. And that seemed to really drive the more authentic market dynamics that are driven by the plant and by the consumer's actual interest in the product, right? Once legalization hit and you had, whether it was the regulatory framework or the testing people, which none of them are standardized, and that's a whole other topic to get
100%.
into on this, right?
100%.
Because without standardization, you can't even have a base point to start to even have these discussions. So right out the rip, you don't have standardization in testing, and then you have people that oftentimes didn't even have experience with the plant as a breeder, a grower, or even a consumer, starting to dictate the rubric by which we would market and sell and educate people. That all got out of hand way too quick. Now, fortunately now, there's enough discussion about the true effects and the impact of the diversity of cannabinoids within the plant, terpenes, flavonoids, and other elements of the plant that give you a better explanation why something that tests 18% could knock you on the couch harder than a 30%er, right? And a further education about each person's individual cannabinoid system and how they've been developed and what the effect is to what they're smoking. Now, having said that, right, I've found that you can still have success giving people that experience, and it's all about having support from, first, it starts with the people that are pulling strings in the facility to make sure that it's profitable. If you can get their support to fill up the rooms with weed that you know is gonna be good, and it can get finished right, and then you can educate the retail frontline accordingly, you can still be successful with lower THC varieties, right? But it gets back to that experience better be AAA. Whether it's the best haze, the best skunk, the best whatever, it has to be finished right and be unique. Because, and I'll end it with this, so I'm sure this sparked a lot from these guys, is because you start to lose the diversity in the genetic makeup that we have available to us when production starts to dictate, I need this to finish in 8 weeks, yield 100 grams per square foot, and turn purple, and test at 30%. Okay, cool, then I'm gonna give you, 100 phenotypes of the same subset of the genome pool and not give you the diversity that the market truly needs.
I love that. Didn't he articulate that fucking perfect? Thank you, Rez. This is exactly sort of what we wanted to revolve the conversation around. But David, and I love the group of guys that we have here. But from my point of view, from Sensi Seeds, a company that's been breeding for so many decades now, from the breeder's point of view and the global supply point of view, how does that shape how you guys breed, how you decide even with the breeder's ground, and what's interesting is I think you're looking at the flavor, you're looking at the cultural side of it, not just the analytical percentage, versus what the global market is actually, medical market is telling us. So could you speak on that a little bit? I think.
Yeah, of course. I think what you just said, you just nailed it. You really, really nailed it. My main interest has always been in the educational side of things, in contact with the community. And the difference with Sensi, we've been established so long in the Netherlands with the coffee shop system being as it is, we're dealing basically with 3 different customer groups, if you will. I mean, our main target, of course, are the breeders. Breeders tend to be passionate. They tend to delve into the history of the plant and to really all aspects of cultivation. So most of them understand the plethora of effects, diversity in the varieties, the terpenes, flavonoids, everything, and search for that specifically. We then have, let's say, the more novice consumers through the coffee shops, which tend to have, well, of course we have Euros, but say they have a couple bucks in their pocket and looking for bang for their buck, so they're going to go for the strongest, highest THC strains they can find, which funnily enough is what I'm noticing here in that culture of higher is better, more is more. But what we've seen, at least in Europe, once those consumers have kind of matured, they start looking for the diversity in effect, in taste, and that's when they start to broaden their palates and interests. And that leads back down to what we've been developing for the last couple of years. So of course, coming to the US is one hell of a learning curve for us, in a way. We finally managed to get our genetics here, which for us is historic.
Congratulations, Sensi Seeds.
Thank you.
It's amazing. We've been going to the Netherlands for decades, and now we actually are blessed to have all you guys' work here. So thank you, and congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it is an honor. Walking around Vegas last night, I was with Guillaume, and we were just kind of amazed, thinking like 10 years ago, we would have ended up in a cell somewhere and never to see the light of day. And now we're here with all of you, which is absolutely fascinating. But moving forward for Sensi, of course, we still have limited genetics here, and we're looking to develop that. And that's why we decided to start an initiative together with really interesting breeders such as yourselves, such as Joe, such as Serge, and of course Cutter, which couldn't join us here. A couple visa issues.
Shout out, Cutter. We love you, man.
Yeah, he's stuck back in Denmark. We would have loved to have him here. So the future's bright, and we look to cater to the public, but I think there's also a really strong responsibility from the from us, from the breeding guys, everyone making money from this industry, to also invest part of that in educating people. We spent the last 35 years with the museums back in Europe trying to do that and sponsoring the Cannabis College. It's really close to my heart, and I know most people that love the plant are always looking to educate and broaden people's kind of view on the plant. And I think that's the way forward towards us also being able to give them a wider variety of product and not be that limited to specific cannabinoid contents or terpene profiles. I think the future's green.
Well said, David. Thank you for that perspective. You know, you said something that I think was really, really interesting that stuck out is the more is more, you know, and just really like the American way, really. And I think part of why I think this discussion is so incredibly important and why I feel, I mean, literally we could have, you know, just go on and on about the importance of this discussion, but if more is more, you know, often that leads to an unhealthy environment in your body or just in life. So I think we do need to start having the conversation. If you look at even like a genetic like Skittles, you know, where it's an ugly little plant, you know, and the original, at least, you know, it wasn't that great, didn't look that great, you know, and the yield wasn't good, but it's quickly became one of the most, you know, favorite and sought after genetics in the world. And so I still feel like, unless it's a hybrid or something that's been crossed in, you know, there's going to be challenges that they're going to face when they start growing their cannabis, you know, at a commercial scale like that. And so as more and more genetics that are incredible medicine are being developed or in the Sensi vaults or just things that are incredibly important or contain compounds or elements that we're yet to understand yet, how do we, and really just speaking from my own, it's really kind of like, hey, you're having this battle with kind of the corporate side on the bottom line and you know, what the profit is, you know, versus how good the medicine is. So I think this half, we're kind of up in the clouds and kind of, you know, want to connect all of it. And then the guys that have the licenses on the other end, you know, it's like, it's a hard line where the rubber hits the road. You know, so with everything that you guys heard, I'm just curious, Matt, like, could you tell me, like, you're sitting there listening to us, like, what comes to mind for you? And even for your own business, you know, if we're constantly, and you know the challenges that we have to find a 30%er that checks off all the boxes that we want to smoke, how can we continue this narrative in a direction that's going to actually create change. That's what I'm hoping to do here today. So could you add to that?
Yeah, that's tricky. I mean, it's a numbers game, so like we know, it's going to take a while hunting, really trying to find that winner, and that's part of the fun of doing it. So, Lyonleaf's business model is really more on the B2B side. So really, finding those winners to help support the brands that we sell into. And we sell into quite a few markets from Canada, Australia to Germany. So, really it's us trying to work with those brands that we're supporting in all these countries to see, how they could take one of our winners that isn't just focused on THC. But in the end day, really, we have to kind of fulfill what they're looking for. So it's tricky for us other than, we make sure that if we find something really exciting, we can keep that in tissue culture, hoping that, as the market's driving in the right direction, we could bring it back out for them. And, as part of our evaluation process, we think it's important to really come in, evaluate, what do you think's the winner before you even know what that THC is? And, with our customers, if we could work with them to take part in that exciting evaluation process, really be like, this is the winner. Not look at the list of THC and be like, this is the one we want.
Yeah. Real quickly, I'll get to you, Rez. But what country do you feel is most inclined to actually moving in that direction? Is there one that you feel that maybe doesn't have the high THC or is open more to the different varieties?
Yeah, I think Canada is really high, but even Canada, it went as high as minimum 30% being required. And it's coming down a little bit where I could say maybe 26. So it's slowly maybe moving a little bit more in the right direction there. And then, a lot of our customers that we work with, especially Germany, saying that they could start, considering things that are a little bit lower. But, right now it's just kind of talking about it. We haven't actually seen it come. But you start to really get a sense that it is moving in the right direction, which is super exciting.
That's good to hear. Rez, did you have something to say?
Yeah, well, I wanted to say, so the experience that we've had in working with licensed producers and dealing with this problem specifically, the way that we've best been able to overcome it is by, the proof is in the pudding, if you will, right? If we know that we have a variety that maybe isn't testing as high, but we believe that it's going to be successful, then we put our money where our mouth is. We let the producer know, we'll stand behind this, and sometimes I'll even back it up contractually, right? Based on how we roll that out. This will sell. We will give you brand support from top down. We've ran this in other markets. People love it, and it will sell out. Give us this chance. Once they give you that chance and you get your foot in the door and it works, because ultimately you just got to sell all the weed, then the conversation becomes a little easier moving forward. And so to give you a specific example, and not just in theoreticals, when we came into Canada, we were bringing our genetic library from Amsterdam to Canopy Growth. At the time it was Tweed. And they imposed all the metrics in the world on us about where it needed to be to go into the facilities. We didn't allow them to release DNA weed for an entire year after it was ready because they didn't have the quality right yet, so we waited. And furthermore, there was behind the scenes discussions about this exactly, and specifically the chocolate fondue, which is a derivative of our chocolate. It wasn't testing high enough and they didn't want to run it. We stood behind it, told them it's gonna run, we're gonna help. It's already been very successful. It's one of our legacy and heritage strains. Chocolate did incredible in Europe, as you guys can attest to. And so this new chocolate fondue, derivative of chocolate, will work. They pushed back, we did it. It ran as the #1 sold strain in Canada for the first 3 years after legalization. And they never questioned again, what we wanted to introduce to market. So I mean,
what percentage was it in?
It was so at the time they wanted everything to, like you said, test in the mid-20s, and it wasn't hitting there. It was hitting 19, 20, and they said they couldn't run it, and they weren't going to do it. And we just pushed it anyways. And with the right marketing, we also made sure that their premium flower team was rolling out the messaging of what chocolate was and connecting it to that heritage. They did that effectively, and it worked. But you just had to have the buy-in from the marketing guys, the production guys, and the people writing the checks. And then you have to know, as the weed guys, whether you're providing genetics or whether you're the grower, to do your job right. Put the right thing in there, and it'll do itself.
David, you have something to say? Or?
No, again, nailed it, man. That is exactly it. I mean, in terms of genetics, God knows we've had our contacts with the Dutch medicinal system, but that's old school now, like archaic. But it was really about the genetics, and again, it's just what you said, education. It's about really the information. Are you going to be able to give people the information they need and attract them to the strain? And proof is in the pudding. So what you said, at the end of the day, especially the experience we have with licensed producers is more for medical markets. And in that sense, it's about the efficiency of the medicine. The high-end THC being one aspect of it, but it's about the plant. It's about everything in the plant and not just that one metric. And then, yeah, proof is in the pudding. Feedback from the patients we've worked with through the years is what has been leading us. The industry will catch up, but it's about the patients for us.
Another way to look at it, from a more bullish way, is one way to get the breeder paid and one way to get the flower sold is if you're the one buying it. So if you have a great brand, if you have partners in these different countries that, hey, they know the brand, they know the market, they know their consumer in their country, and they can get behind you. And I think this is kind of what Rez was speaking to, is like it takes everybody going all in. And one of the things that's I think everybody can leverage is when you're out at Spannabis, when you're out, traveling the world and meeting people, it's like find the people that want to buy the weed. They're there. The buyers are there. They want good quality flower. They want brands. They want variety. They want, and it's, what's up, Lance? Good to see you, bud. First smoke of the day in the house. Ladies and gentlemen, what's up? Give them their love. Definitely holding down the culture right there. Anyways, Dave, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to add. Again, a European example when looking into the Dutch patients, right? The first thing they do when they get their medical license usually is take that pot from the pharmacy, empty it out, head to the coffee shop, and get the strain that works for them. And it is not always going to be a heavy, high THC strain. Some go for amnesia, some are going to go for a more hazy effect. I mean, again, it needs to be, when it comes to medical, dictated by the patient first and foremost. And right now we're in a very, politicians don't really understand the plant, so they tend to want to categorize in a very, very simple way. THC is the hot topic. CBD's been one in Europe for a long time as well. And that very simplistic approach to a very complex system is one that we need to try and revolutionize. But of course, it needs to be financially viable. And that's the crux of it. And then we get to the lab testing discussion, which I think does need to be addressed, because I've been hearing some very interesting stories as to how things are going right now and how to get the results you want. And I think that's a major issue for moving forwards.
Hey, Dave, we haven't heard from you. Could you just, based on where the conversation is going, can you share what's going through your head?
I mean, I echo what everybody else said. Like, grow good weed. If you've got good product, you will overcome the THC, attachment and love for stuff. We've got some stuff that is great, yields very well, checks a ton of boxes, might be a little bit lower, but when people see it, taste it, touch it, yeah, they can get their head around it and say, yeah, this is something that's worth running, and this is something that I want to represent my brand. Canada's been tough because it has been so competitive, and THC, we all know that quality is not a number. It's good weed in a bag. Now that new markets are coming on, product is needed, and if we can give them good product, then we can get away from this, THC is everything.
We need to speak their lingo. So when you sit in the room with the back teams of the suits and the marketing guys, and they want to talk about value adds, and they want to talk about units sold in a very CPG conversation, then you need to speak their language, and you need to explain to them, okay, let's come up with different value adds. Currently, the only thing that you're pushing your teams is this THC value. The best counter argument to high THC weed is the simple fact that nobody walks into a bar and says, can you please give me your Bacardi 151? And I would like a straight, neat glass of it, and I'm just gonna pound this Bacardi 151. Not a single adult does that, right? And the second you present that simple fact to anybody who's making the argument for high THC weed being superior, they'll shut up. And you can just smile, and you can hand them really good weed that, again, might not test at 30%, but maybe it yields you know, it really yields well. Maybe it's really easy on the grower. Maybe it's really easy in the trim room. Maybe it is something that you can line up so that all the rooms have consistency in production in terms of timing, in terms of feed, and in terms of other inputs that make it commercially viable so that you can counteract the argument that they need that high THC. And then once they're successful with all those other metrics, people like Dave are happy, they're making money. And then people like us are happy because we know we're getting our best weed out to the people.
Hey, can we? Let's go, Ray. Rez, I always appreciate your perspective, man. Your passion and your how you take your intelligence into this. So I really appreciate you, man. All of you. But I wanted to get back to this. You know, everyone keeps on hearing commercial viability. It's like a scary thing to say, right? But Matt, like, can you dive in a little bit more? Like, define commercial viability. Can you dive, I know in the beginning I asked you to kind of touch on it, but can you dive in deep, like, to you, what are the things that must be checked off, like when you're adding in a variety?
Yeah, for sure. I think we've pretty much checked off kind of all the key matrix. One other really important one for us, though, is we take a lot of pride in the fact that our product doesn't need to be irradiated. But you know, we have noticed different genetics going through the exact same process in our facility. One could test a lot higher on yeast and mold than another. So it really starts with the genetics in that sense. So that's another, you know, really big one for us that we look for, especially, you know, with us exporting to other countries and, you know, our product only being like registered for Germany if it's not irradiated. And then, of course, you know, with the way the regulations work, taking the risk of exporting something to Germany, worst case, God forbid, it failed micro, there's no way for them to return that product. So, you know, that to us is a really key metric. All the other ones I think we've really touched on, you know, grams per square foot or per light, a lot of people talk about. Like in our facility, really looking at like optimizing the whole thing is we look at grams per square foot per day in the year. So that's really looking at like how are you optimizing your facility, you know, 365 days all the way around. And that's where, you know, strains being 8 weeks and things like that really come into play.
I'm glad that you said that, because really one of the things I've learned with you, Matt, is no matter what your varieties are, I mean, if you have the goal, you know, if you just want to grow tasty, different flavors and release some seeds and you're not focused on a global market, then maybe it's not something you need to focus on. But one of the things that I've definitely totally shifted in is realizing, like, wow, I really got to go and I got to find the really high THC genetics that are out there. It's just so important. I mean, as much as if I went and popped every single bean from every single one of these breeders that are here today, I guarantee that a high amount of them are not going to check off these boxes. So I think the solution is, and how we can all work together is, I want to be a bridge between, you know, these people like Matt, people like Dave, and people like my friends at Umami or Oakland Seed Company, or you know, Rebel Grow or Sensi Seeds, or any of these other people are growing, so we can educate and have these conversations and help each other and let each other know, like, hey, I found one of these unicorns that's commercially viable, and this is why. You found one, or let me help you find one, and then they find one, and then, hey, let's take our commercially viable genetics and let's breed hybrids off of that. And so that goes into, and this is something that Matt and I actually dealt with, you know, and I won't get into the name of the genetic, but it's a winner, it's a global winner. And then I've never heard of this. He goes, hey, this is great, but, you know, failed on the biology. It's a little bit too high. And I was like, what do you mean? And to speak to what he was saying is, like, there's certain genetics that you didn't spray anything, completely clean environment, but just naturally the plant is going to pick up, you know, more of these contaminants, and it'll fail. And so these are things that you have to look at, because you could have a whole breeding program and you're releasing things, and that's just one more element that you've got to consider, because that could cause problems. And if a guy like Matt has, you know, 150 kilograms of flour and it's great and checks off all the boxes, but it's teetering or it needs to be irradiated in order to pass, then that's something that they're not going to go with. So good point, Matt. I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah, man. I think that covered a lot of what I want to cover. Did anybody else want to add anything? Anybody have any questions for any of these guys? I know we haven't been doing any Q&A, but does anybody want to ask any of these guys a question? Anybody? All right. All right, guys. Appreciate you coming up. Give these guys a round of applause. Appreciate you. Also, anybody that's interested in having their genetics, cultivated in Canada and wants to go to a global market, come talk to me. And let's have a conversation with Matt or maybe Dave, okay? Thanks.